So thanks so much for coming on the channel today. We're here to talk about IPCHAIN database. Now, this is a subject near and dear to my heart as a content creator. Intellectual property is a huge thing. But for people that are not in that world and may not know so much about intellectual property, could you start off by talking a little bit about some of the problems that currently exist in the intellectual property world? Maybe some of the problems you're trying to solve with this product?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks also for inviting me and giving me the chance to be here. I think we should start by defining what actually intellectual property can be, what types of intellectual property are there. So I think it could be said that intellectual property is everything that you create if you don't use your hands, right? So that could be art, like you said. That could be videos, music, texts. It could be computer code. When you write a game or an application, it can be the assets within the 3D art that you create. And it could also be inventions or scientific research. And for all these different kinds of intellectual property, you have different, I would say, methods to protect that. And all of them, I mean, there is a system in place that works amazingly well, considering the complexity of it and, globalization and yeah, the increase in what people are looking at in terms of how complex that really is. But on the other hand, there are lots of people who have to deal with the protection of these, products that they create, and they don't have the means to do that. They are not always big companies, but they could be, guys like you and me creating something. And of course, we want to make sure that nobody can use that without us giving them the okay to. So the problems is that you have to invest money, you have to understand the system. And sometimes that's not even enough. Let's keep it very simple here. Let's say you are an artist, you create something. Maybe you are a poet and you write a poem, and one day you wake up, you tell your friends about it, and you wake up and you hear it in the radio. You hear some commercial using a line out of your poem. So what can you do? Of course, you will try, to get, money out of that. Monetization is the real reason for protecting something. So what can you do? How do you prove that it's your original work? You can have your friends come over as witnesses to court, and probably the other side will have their own witnesses. So you could use your own notes, but who's going to believe you that you wrote it down, prior to hearing that commercial? So actually, it's pretty difficult. Even if you upload it to your webpage, you can change the content of your webpage anytime. It could be even written in Wikipedia, and that listing can also be changed later on. So what can you do to effectively protect that and show that you are the original author? Well, actually, that's pretty easy. I mean, if you use blockchain technology, that's, like the easiest use case that you can find regarding blockchain. You store information on the blockchain and it stays there. It cannot be edited. It cannot be erased. The whole, architecture of this thing prevents any such changes. And that can be real useful proof in front of court in all kinds of legal proceedings. So me personally, I think that IP, intellectual property, is like the best use case, the easiest use case for blockchain technology ever. It was just kind of amazing for me to find out that nobody did a project, in that regard. And we were the first ones. I wasn't expecting that. I started out by saying, okay, that's perfect. That's probably a tool we could use, me personally as a researcher. And it happened, there is none. So we said, okay, then we create one. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's great. So you had mentioned that there already are existing structures in place for intellectual property in most, if not all, parts of the world. And you mentioned going to court and showing proof. How is storing things on IPCHAIN database on this new blockchain solution? What kind of legal ramifications does that have? Would something like that actually hold up in court? And is there precedent for that?
Well, there is a system in place that is basically, run by WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is part of the United Nations, or actually an agency of theirs. And they are the final authority in all terms of intellectual property. So the different patent and trademark offices follow their guidelines and so on. And what we did in the beginning is we reached out to WIPO and said, okay, if there is nobody offering such a service, I think these guys would be interested if we use their guidelines. So we actually entered into a partnership with their division, WIPO Green, which is their tech division, so to speak. And I was invited to Geneva to the headquarters and met with the assistant general director and discussed, the ramifications, the possible, the potential of blockchain technology with regard to intellectual property. And we said, okay, we build our platform, IPCHAIN database, using those regulations, those rules and guidelines. And that means if we do that, all the patent offices have to use our data in their research. Because if you file a patent, for instance, what does the patent office do? You pay them for it. They have to do research to make sure that what you are proposing is actually new, because that's like, a necessity for filing a patent. It has to be new. And they do research for that. And that research follows different guidelines. And if you, now talking from the perspective, of IPCHAIN as a database, if you follow these guidelines too, these guys are expected and have to use your data, so to speak. It's going to be accepted because it's only logical. In terms of, in terms of it being, an efficient proof in court, it could be different because in the end, there is going to be a judge and he would have to rule whether something is going to be accepted or not as proof. But on the other hand, I think experts all agree that blockchain technology is something that's especially safe. Considering you have other kinds of proof that are maybe, just resting on servers and stored there. Blockchain is decentralized. It's encrypted, so there's nothing out there that's safer, and any expert will agree to that. So I think it's just a matter of time when we will see, as you said, examples of when blockchain was used as proof in court. But since IPCHAIN database doesn't exist yet, we don't see any rulings in regard to blockchain technology for IP.
Yeah, I agree that this is a perfect application for blockchain technology. One of the interesting, I don't know if it's a problem or what, that I keep thinking about in this industry too, is it's great that when things go on the blockchain, it's immutable and they're there forever. However, in a situation like this where there's some judgment call made potentially sometime down the line, you could see that as a bit of a problem, that things are on the blockchain forever. The example I'm thinking of is, you've heard of, patent trolls and things like that, just kind of putting whatever they can think of into this system so that maybe they'll have better paid lawyers down the line if it ever goes to court or something like that. Have you guys thought about that at all? What's to stop people from just putting a lot of disingenuous things into this blockchain?
Well, in the end, you have to have a certain kind of quality in your data. So for a patent office to actually use IPCHAIN data, we have to make sure that we don't have, too much spam on the blockchain, so to speak. And that's pretty easy because, again, you have guidelines by WIPO that you can follow. So, for instance, if you have an invention that you want to store using IPCHAIN database, or you publish it there as a defensive publication, as it is called, then you have to give certain kinds of, information, detail of information. So you have to name your invention, you have to explain what it is all about. Maybe you have to say, okay, it follows this or that classification. And you also have to give, maybe explanations as how you would build it, how you can use it. And if you ask such kind of information and people will have the ability to enter all that, then you essentially make sure that they're not going to upload something that is not meaningful. Because in the end, what would be the point in that? If they say, okay, I have something that creates gold out of water, they could theoretically save that on IPCHAIN database. But even though I think we are going to be a very I wouldn't call it cheap, but I think a very low-cost solution for people, because we want to help, also the small guys and not only the big companies. In the end, nobody's going to waste money. So if they pay for something, I think they will try to use it sensibly. I think the only risk could be that they think something is new and actually it isn't, because there has been maybe a patent in the past. But unfortunately, that is some kind of research they have to do on their own. I can't help them with that.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like you guys are really far along in working with the existing regulatory bodies and thinking through the legal issues of this. What's your roadmap for the future, though, in actually building this product out? What can we expect to see from you in the next, 6 to 18 to 24 months?
Well, we got great support by a number of organizations, not only the WIPO and the patent offices, but we try to get as many stakeholders involved as possible. So we do have a partnership with a very big law firm. Actually, I think it's the biggest one in IP law. It's called the Dennemeyer Group, and they're active on 5 continents. So real big, like the leading company in this field, and they're supporting us by helping us, to tailor our services to the needs of all those potential user groups that we have. So we have the scientists, we have artists, we have the inventors, and we do also have companies, of course. And we also try to get as many of those stakeholder groups also involved, usually by trying to win some organizations that represent them, I think, accurately. We, for instance, also got a partnership with the Marie Curie Alumni Association, which is real big in Europe. It represents more than 10,000 leading researchers of the European Union, and they are, so to speak, beta testers for us. And we are currently creating our, I think it's like the most popular word in blockchain now, minimal viable product. So we are definitely going to offer a basic version of our service, which is going to be available around the time of the ICO. That has several reasons. I'm very honest about that. One of the reasons is also a legal one, because if you are a utility token and you sell that utility token, it has to be useful for something. So you have to be able to use that on a platform, and we're going to release one. We're probably going to release a few videos explaining about our platform, on showing off our alpha version, how it works, what it can do, and so on. And there's going to be a beta version that we're going to release. And then I think over the course of the next 12 months, we are going to finalize the final version. I mean, currently things look very good, so I expect that we will have a final version ready around the end of 2018.
Yeah, so having an alpha version is going to put you ahead of about 90% of the other ICOs out there. So yeah, for now, kind of a more technical question for some of my more technical viewers. What does this look like behind the scenes? Are you mentioned, there's going to be some tokenization aspect of it, but is the IPCHAIN database itself going to be on a separate blockchain, or will that be built on top of Ethereum or Hyperledger or something like that? How does that all work?
Yeah, actually, we thought a lot about this, and we're going to use a very open architecture. So basically, we could use any suitable public blockchain. We're going to go with Ethereum for now. The main reason for that is the network is considered to be very secure with a high number of nodes. So maybe for those viewers that are not so much into the details of blockchain and what makes it safe, usually it's the number of nodes that you run, thinking like different servers where all the information is stored at the same time. So by using the Ethereum network, we essentially have 24,000 different servers that somebody would have to be able to hack at the same point in time, which I think is more or less impossible. And that makes this whole thing so very secure. So I think in the future, there could be maybe another blockchain that could be more suitable, just as secure, but maybe with lower transaction fees, which are reasonable right now. But, with all the changes, the increases in prices that are going to happen, maybe we will see a better blockchain solution for us. And we wanted to stay, flexible, that we could adapt to that change.
Great. So for people that want to go more in depth on some of these subjects and things that you've addressed today, what are the best places online to find out more about IPCHAIN database? Where do you guys hang out online? Slack, Discord, anything like that?
Well, I think the best way to get in touch with us is our Telegram group, but we also do have a Slack channel they could join. Maybe it's the easiest to start out by visiting our webpage. It's ipchaindatabase.com. Where they will find a lot of information. Also our white paper, I think that goes very much into detail in regards to both the architecture, but also, the whole IP law system that I think people need to understand, not to be able to use the platform to its full effect, but maybe to get an impression of why this is really necessary and why we think that is such a great use case of blockchain technology. Because once you understood the fundamentals, then you understand that such a project like ours can really help to contribute to this field and make it easier, cheaper, faster for people to protect their intellectual property. And maybe one last thing that also I think needs to be said and is very interesting, blockchain is not a static thing, right? That's the very and most important aspect to it. So it's not just storing information there once. What we can do is we can make sure that people can, safely share this information with others by making it available easily. So you have confidential information, you upload it to IPCHAIN database, and if you want to share it, then you just send out a link. And if some other party wants to access that information, they sign an NDA. That's all done very conveniently within our platform. And that NDA then is also stored on the blockchain, making sure that you can prove, okay, that party only had access and agreed to our terms because they signed that NDA. And the same applies to like a marketplace functionality of IPCHAIN database, where you can use it to sell rights or buy rights and can be sure that you are actually the owner of something.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing that I wanted to ask you about. I'm glad you brought it up, is the whole marketplace of buying and selling intellectual property. I mean, does that extend to things like companies? I mean, if I have a small web startup, could I sell that on your platform? And once again, with the patents and everything like that, it sounds like you guys have put a lot of thought into legal obligations of that. How does the transfer of intellectual property work from a legal perspective on your platform?
Well, you have to differentiate between two types of intellectual property. So first comes those that are, that come attached with copyrights. So you create something artistic, text or videos or music or pictures or whatever, and then you automatically hold, the copyright to that. You are the owner of the intellectual property rights. And then there is the group of intellectual property where you have to, let's say, go to a patent office, inventions. That's the main reason. Inventions and trademarks, where you have to say, okay, I want to, file an application, and then you get these rights granted on a national level. So when it comes to those, IPCHAIN database can document transfer. So you could theoretically document, your selling of this thing to another party. So you simply take, the contractual agreement and put it on the blockchain. That is all that is needed. Actually, let me tell you something that's very interesting. Obviously, patent offices know very well who filed the patent, because that's also, seen whenever you, as a third party, access this information. It's like everybody can access that, but nobody knows who actually holds the rights to that, because there are, private agreements between two companies, and that's not transparent. So actually, some of the patent offices, they keep telling us, okay, it's very interesting to have IPCHAIN database, because maybe, just maybe, we are not forcing anybody to do anything. People are willing to make it more transparent using IPCHAIN database when they sell such a right. So that could be also used by companies, absolutely.
All right, great. Well, I know you're a very busy man, and thank you so much for your time here today. This is a really interesting product, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of IPCHAIN database in the future.
Thank you so much.